Eleanor Brooks, a respected black judge in a small town, strives to bridge community gaps through a dedicated task force addressing systemic inequalities. Despite her humility and modest lifestyle, she faces relentless prejudice and racial biases from colleagues and influential community members. Subtle microaggressions and overt discrimination escalate tensions, culminating in a formal complaint questioning her impartiality. Eleanor remains composed amid mounting frustration and hostility, including threatening encounters that highlight the deep-seated racism and resistance she must overcome. Her journey exposes the infuriating barriers imposed by a biased system, challenging her integrity and commitment to justice. Eleanor Brooks walked through the ornate doors of the small-town community center, her presence both commanding and unassuming. At 45, she had carved a niche for herself in the legal world, rising to become one of the most respected judges in the state. Her office, adorned with bookshelves filled with legal tomes and personal mementos, reflected her dedication and passion for justice. Yet, despite her high-profile position, Eleanor led a modest life, choosing to reside in a quaint neighborhood where she was as much a part of the community as anyone else. Today was no different. The community center was hosting its annual spring fair, a beloved event that brought together residents of all ages for a day of festivities, games, and local food. Eleanor had volunteered to help organize the event, believing in the importance of fostering strong community bonds. As she moved through the bustling hallways, her sharp eyes missed nothing: the vibrant decorations, the cheerful chatter, and the subtle undercurrents of everyday life that she so often overlooked in her judicial duties. Eleanor was dressed casually, a stark contrast to the tailored suits she typically wore in court. She wore a simple, elegant dress paired with comfortable flats, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her demeanor was warm and approachable, a deliberate choice to bridge the gap between her esteemed position and the everyday lives of the people she served. As she approached the refreshment table, she noticed a group of teenagers huddled nearby, laughing and sharing stories. One of them, Marcus, a bright young man with dreams of becoming a lawyer himself, looked up and offered a shy smile. Eleanor acknowledged him with a nod, her eyes twinkling with genuine interest. "Hey Marcus, how's the mock trial going?" she asked, leaning slightly forward to engage with him. Marcus's smile broadened. "It's going well, Judge Brooks. We've been working hard on our cases. Your advice during last week's workshop really helped us out." Eleanor felt a surge of pride. Mentoring the next generation was something she cherished, a way to give back and ensure that justice remained in capable hands. "That's wonderful to hear. Keep up the good work." Just as she turned to continue her rounds, a commotion erupted near the entrance of the hall. A man, visibly agitated, was arguing with one of the event organizers. His voice was loud, cutting through the ambient noise of the fair. "Excuse me, but I need to speak with someone in charge here," he demanded, his frustration palpable. Eleanor instinctively moved towards the source of the disturbance, her natural inclination to mediate conflicts taking over. As she approached, she could see that the man was wearing a well-tailored suit, a stark contrast to the casual attire of the other attendees. His demeanor suggested someone accustomed to authority, much like herself. "Can I help you, sir?" Eleanor asked, her voice calm and steady. The man turned to face her, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. "Yes, I need to address an issue with the event layout. It's causing significant inconvenience, and I expect it to be resolved immediately." Eleanor listened attentively, assessing the situation. "I'm sorry to hear that you're experiencing difficulties. Could you please explain what the problem is, so I can assist you better?" The man took a deep breath, trying to compose himself. "It's this seating arrangement. It's chaotic and inefficient. People are getting lost, and it's reflecting poorly on the organizers. I thought with my background in event management, I could offer some constructive feedback, but no one seems to be taking it seriously." Eleanor nodded, recognizing the underlying tension. "I appreciate your feedback. Let's see how we can improve the layout. Would you mind walking me through your concerns?" As they began to discuss the specifics, Eleanor's mind raced. The man's background in event management meant he was knowledgeable, but his approach was confrontational. She aimed to de-escalate the situation, understanding that his frustration likely stemmed from genuine concerns rather than personal animosity. Meanwhile, other attendees watched the interaction with varying degrees of interest and concern. Among them was Mayor Thompson, a longtime friend of Eleanor's, who had arrived to support the event. His presence added another layer of complexity, as the man's criticisms could potentially reflect on the town's leadership. As the conversation continued, Eleanor noticed subtle signs of resistance in the man's posture. Arms crossed, tight jaw, eyes darting around the room as if seeking allies. She knew that in these moments, maintaining composure and demonstrating empathy were crucial to resolving conflicts effectively. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention," Eleanor said sincerely. "Let's work together to find a solution that benefits everyone. Your expertise is valuable, and I believe we can make the necessary adjustments." The man's demeanor softened slightly, the rigidity in his stance giving way to a more open posture. "I appreciate that, Judge Brooks. I just want to ensure that the event runs smoothly and that everyone has a positive experience." Eleanor smiled reassuringly. "Absolutely. Let's take a look at the layout and see what changes we can implement." As they moved to inspect the seating arrangement, Eleanor felt a sense of satisfaction. She had navigated the initial tension successfully, turning a potential confrontation into a collaborative effort. However, as they worked together, a realization began to dawn on her. The man, whose name was Henry Caldwell, was not just a concerned attendee, but also a prominent figure in the community. His influence and connections meant that unresolved issues could escalate beyond the fair. The social climate of the town was a tapestry of progress and underlying tensions. While outwardly welcoming and inclusive, there were still whispers of systemic challenges and prejudices that lingered beneath the surface. Eleanor, as a black woman in a position of power, was no stranger to navigating these complexities. Her humble lifestyle and approachable nature had earned her respect, but they also placed her in a unique position where she had to balance authority with relatability. As the fair progressed, Eleanor continued to oversee various activities, her presence a stabilizing force. Yet, the encounter with Henry lingered in her mind. She knew that his initial outburst was a symptom of deeper frustrations that perhaps extended beyond the event itself. The town, like many others, was grappling with issues of inequality, representation, and the slow pace of systemic change. Eleanor's role as a judge meant that she often dealt with the legal ramifications of these societal challenges, but today, she was directly addressing them within the community space. Later that afternoon, as the fair reached its peak, Eleanor found herself at the stage, overseeing the next set of performances. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden hue over the fairgrounds, enhancing the vibrant atmosphere. Families gathered, children laughed, and the aroma of local delicacies filled the air. It was a scene Eleanor loved, an embodiment of community spirit and togetherness. However, the peaceful setting was about to be disrupted. As she observed the crowd, she noticed Henry approaching her again, this time with a more composed demeanor. His expression was thoughtful, and he seemed eager to engage in a more meaningful dialogue. "Judge Brooks, may I have a moment?" Henry asked, extending his hand. Eleanor shook his hand warmly. "Of course, Henry. What can I do for you?" He took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "I wanted to thank you for addressing my concerns earlier. It meant a lot that you took the time to listen and work towards a solution. I realize my approach was a bit harsh, and I appreciate your patience." Eleanor nodded, appreciating his candor. "Thank you for your understanding. It's important for us to address these issues together." Henry hesitated for a moment before continuing. "There's something else I wanted to discuss. Something that's been on my mind regarding the broader community. I've been involved in various local initiatives, and I believe we can work together to tackle some of the systemic challenges we face." Eleanor felt a sense of anticipation. Collaborative efforts were essential in driving meaningful change, and Henry's initiative could be a step in the right direction. "I'm all ears. What do you have in mind?" Henry outlined a proposal for a community task force aimed at addressing issues such as access to quality education, economic disparities, and improving relations between different community groups. Eleanor listened intently, recognizing the potential impact of such an initiative. "This is a commendable effort, Henry," Eleanor said thoughtfully. "I'd be happy to support and participate in this task force together. We can make a tangible difference." As they shook hands, sealing their commitment to the cause, Eleanor couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. The initial confrontation with Henry had transformed into an opportunity for collaboration and progress. It was a reminder that even in moments of tension, there was potential for growth and positive change. As the evening progressed, Eleanor reflected on the day's events. The fair had been a microcosm of the larger societal landscape, filled with joy, challenges, and the ever-present potential for transformation. Her role as a judge was just one facet of her identity. She was also a community leader, a mentor, and an advocate for justice and equality. Yet, amidst her achievements and the respect she commanded, Eleanor remained grounded. Her modest lifestyle was a testament to her humility, a quality that endeared her to those around her. She lived in a modest home within the community, frequented local diners, and maintained close relationships with her neighbors. This balance between power and humility was delicate, but Eleanor navigated it with grace, understanding that true leadership was rooted in empathy and connection. As the final performances concluded and the lights of the fairgrounds dimmed, Eleanor felt a sense of fulfillment. The day had been a testament to the strength of community and the importance of addressing challenges head-on. Yet, she was acutely aware that this was just the beginning. The systemic issues that plagued the town required ongoing effort, collaboration, and unwavering dedication. Little did Eleanor know, the seeds of change she had planted today would soon be met with resistance, testing her resolve and the very principles she stood for. The journey ahead would challenge her in ways she had never anticipated, pushing her to the limits of her influence and the depths of her integrity. But for now, as she bid farewell to the last of the fairgoers and made her way home under the starlit sky, Eleanor felt a sense of optimism. The path to justice and equality was fraught with obstacles, but with each step she took, she moved closer to a community where respect, dignity, and fairness were not just ideals, but realities. Eleanor Brooks walked through the familiar streets of her neighborhood, the evening air cool against her skin. The stars had begun to twinkle in the twilight sky, casting a serene glow over the modest homes that lined the avenue. Her mind replayed the day's events: the fair, the confrontation with Henry Caldwell, and their subsequent discussion about the community task force. Despite the positive outcome, a lingering unease gnawed at her, a sense that the path ahead would not be as straightforward as she had hoped. As she approached her cozy home, Eleanor noticed the soft hum of conversation emanating from her front porch. Her neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, a kindly widow who always had a fresh batch of cookies ready for visitors, was chatting animatedly with a young couple. Eleanor offered a warm smile and a nod before entering her home, the door closing softly behind her. Inside, the house was a sanctuary of calm. The living room was adorned with family photos, showcasing generations of Brooks family members smiling at various milestones. Eleanor took a moment to appreciate the tranquility before making her way to the kitchen, where she poured herself a cup of herbal tea. She settled into her favorite armchair, the fabric worn from years of use but still as comfortable as ever. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, pulling her from her reverie. It was a message from Henry Caldwell. "Eleanor, I've been thinking more about our conversation today. I'd like to discuss the community task force further. Are you available tomorrow evening?" Eleanor smiled, appreciating his continued commitment. She typed a quick response, agreeing to meet after dinner. Setting her phone aside, she reflected on the significance of their partnership. Working together could bridge gaps within the community, addressing long-standing issues that had been overlooked for too long. However, as she contemplated the future, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that challenges were looming on the horizon. The social climate in her town was a delicate balance, with progress sometimes overshadowed by underlying tensions and prejudices that had persisted for generations. She knew that as a Black woman in a position of authority, she would inevitably encounter obstacles rooted in systemic biases. The next morning, Eleanor woke early, the promise of a productive day ahead energizing her. She prepared a simple breakfast, savoring the quiet moments before the day's demands took over. After ensuring her home was in order, she headed to the courthouse, her steps purposeful and steady. The courthouse stood as a symbol of justice and order, its grand facade reflecting Eleanor's esteemed position. Inside, the halls buzzed with the usual activity: lawyers hurrying between offices, clerks managing paperwork, and the ever-present hum of conversations about cases and legal precedents. Eleanor made her way to her chambers, where she reviewed the docket for the day, preparing herself for the cases that awaited her. As she entered her office, her assistant Michael, looked up from his desk, offering a respectful nod. "Good morning. Judge Brooks. Henry Caldwell is here to see you about the task force proposal." Eleanor nodded, gesturing for him to take a seat. "Thank you, Michael. Please let him know I'll be with him shortly." A few minutes later, Henry entered the room, his demeanor more composed than the previous day's confrontation. He extended his hand, which Eleanor shook firmly. "Good morning, Henry. I'm glad you could make it." "Good morning, Eleanor. I appreciate you taking the time," he replied, settling into the chair opposite her desk. They delved into the details of the community task force, outlining goals, potential projects, and the importance of inclusive representation. As they discussed strategies for addressing issues such as educational disparities, economic inequality, and community relations, Eleanor felt a renewed sense of purpose. This collaboration had the potential to effect meaningful change, bridging gaps that had long divided the town. However, as they worked, a subtle shift in the atmosphere caught Eleanor's attention. A colleague, Judge Ramirez, approached her office, his expression curt and businesslike. "Judge Brooks, I need to discuss a case with you regarding the Smithson trial." Eleanor nodded, momentarily excusing herself from her conversation with Henry. As she followed Judge Ramirez to the conference room, she couldn't help but notice the subtle undertones of tension in his demeanor. Their interactions had always been professional, but today, there was an unspoken strain that Eleanor couldn't quite decipher. In the conference room, Judge Ramirez wasted no time. "Eleanor, I've been reviewing the Smithson case, and I have some concerns about the evidence presented. I believe we need to take a closer look before proceeding further." Eleanor listened attentively, her mind processing the information. "I agree, Ramirez. Let's go over the details together and ensure we're making the right decision." As they pored over the case files, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Judge Ramirez's concerns than mere procedural diligence. His critiques felt personal, as if there was an underlying bias influencing his judgment. She remained composed, focusing on the facts and maintaining her professionalism despite the growing unease. After concluding their review, Judge Ramirez turned to her, his expression softening slightly. "Thank you for addressing my concerns, Eleanor. It's important that we uphold the highest standards of justice." Eleanor nodded, though her mind remained unsettled. "Absolutely. We owe it to the community to ensure that every case is handled with the utmost fairness and integrity." As Judge Ramirez left the room, Eleanor couldn't help but feel a sense of frustration. She had dedicated her career to justice and equality, striving to be a beacon of fairness in a system that often fell short. Yet, she sensed that her commitment was being questioned, not just by her peers, but perhaps by the very structures meant to support her. Leaving the courthouse later that afternoon, Eleanor decided to take a walk through the nearby park to clear her mind. The park was a peaceful retreat, with winding paths, blooming flowers, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. Children played on the swings, their laughter echoing through the air, while adults engaged in leisurely strolls or conversations on benches. As she walked, Eleanor reflected on the day's events: the productive meeting with Henry, the strained interaction with Judge Ramirez, and the pervasive undercurrents of tension that seemed to linger in every corner of her professional life. She was a respected figure, yet the weight of systemic biases and prejudices pressed upon her, challenging her resolve and her ability to remain unshaken. Her thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. "Eleanor!" She turned to see her friend, Dr. Linda Hayes, a renowned surgeon and fellow advocate for social justice, approaching her with a warm smile. Linda was one of the few people who truly understood the complexities of Eleanor's position, offering unwavering support and candid conversations about the challenges they both faced. "Linda, it's good to see you," Eleanor greeted, returning the smile. Linda joined her on the path, her presence a comforting reminder of the strength found in solidarity. "I heard about the incident with Judge Ramirez. Are you okay?" Eleanor sighed, the frustration evident in her eyes. "It's becoming increasingly difficult to navigate. I feel like every step I take is being scrutinized, doubted. It's exhausting." Linda placed a reassuring hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "You're doing important work, Eleanor. Don't let the negativity get to you. We have to keep pushing forward, even when it feels like the system is against us." Eleanor nodded, drawing strength from Linda's words. "I know, but sometimes it feels like an uphill battle. I just wish people could see beyond their biases and recognize the effort and dedication we bring to our roles." As they continued their walk, the conversation shifted to the upcoming community meeting, where Eleanor and Henry would present their task force proposal. The anticipation of the meeting weighed on Eleanor, knowing that she would have to face both support and opposition from various quarters. "I'm confident in what we're doing," Henry interjected, his voice steady. "But I understand there might be resistance. It's important that we stay united and focused on our goals." Eleanor appreciated Henry's commitment. "Absolutely, together, we can make a real difference. It's about creating a platform where every voice is heard and respected." Their conversation was a beacon of hope amidst the challenges Eleanor faced. The task force represented a tangible step towards addressing the systemic issues that plagued their community, a step towards fostering unity and understanding. However, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Eleanor's thoughts drifted back to Judge Ramirez and the subtle yet palpable tension he exuded. She couldn't ignore the possibility that her standing as a black woman in a position of authority was influencing how she was perceived and treated by some of her peers. The following days were a whirlwind of preparations for the community task force meeting. Eleanor balanced her judicial responsibilities with the demands of organizing the fair's aftermath and strategizing for the initiative with Henry. Despite her packed schedule, she remained steadfast in her commitment, driven by the belief that meaningful change was within reach. On the day of the meeting, Eleanor arrived at the community center early, ensuring that every detail was in place. The room was set up with chairs arranged in a semicircle, a projector ready for presentations, and informational pamphlets laid out on the tables. Henry arrived shortly after, his demeanor calm and focused. "Ready?" Henry asked, extending his hand. "More than ever," Eleanor replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Let's make this happen." As the community members began to arrive, Eleanor felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension. The task force had garnered interest, but she knew that not everyone would be on board. The room filled with a diverse group of individuals, each bringing their own perspectives and experiences to the table. Eleanor took her place at the front, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. She glanced at Henry, who offered a reassuring nod, before turning to address the assembly. "Thank you all for coming today. Our goal is to create a community task force that addresses some of the most pressing issues we face: access to quality education, economic disparities, and improving relations between different community groups. This is a collaborative effort, and your input is invaluable." As she spoke, Eleanor noticed subtle shifts in the room's dynamics. Some attendees nodded in agreement, while others exchanged skeptical glances. The air was thick with a mixture of hope and hesitation, mirroring the complexities of the issues at hand. Midway through the meeting, a man stood up, his face stern and his posture rigid. He was Mr. Thompson, a local businessman with significant influence in the town. Eleanor recognized him as a vocal critic of previous community initiatives, often questioning their effectiveness and intent. "Judge Brooks, while I appreciate the effort to address these issues, I'm concerned about the feasibility of your proposals," Mr. Thompson began, his tone measured but laced with underlying tension. "Our community needs practical solutions, not just lofty ideals." Eleanor maintained her composure, responding thoughtfully. "Mr. Thompson, I understand your concerns. Our proposals are grounded in thorough research and aim to create sustainable change. We welcome your insights and expertise to ensure our strategies are both effective and implementable." Mr. Thompson's gaze lingered on Eleanor, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "I hope so, Judge Brooks. The success of this task force depends on the collaboration of all stakeholders." As the meeting progressed, Eleanor continued to facilitate discussions, her presence a blend of authority and empathy. However, beneath the surface, the subtle tensions she had sensed earlier began to surface. Some community members, influenced by long-standing biases and prejudices, questioned her leadership and the sincerity of her efforts. Later that evening, after the meeting had adjourned, Eleanor returned to her home, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The day had been a testament to both the potential and the challenges of community collaboration. She couldn't help but reflect on the nuanced dynamics of race and authority that seemed to permeate every interaction. As she settled into her armchair with a cup of tea, her phone buzzed with a new notification. It was a message from Henry. "Great meeting today. Let's keep the momentum going. Tomorrow, we start reaching out to potential partners." Eleanor felt a surge of determination. Despite the obstacles, she was resolute in her mission to foster positive change. Yet, as she considered the road ahead, she couldn't ignore the undercurrents of resistance that hinted at deeper, more systemic issues within the community. The following morning, Eleanor was summoned to the courthouse for an urgent meeting. As she entered Judge Ramirez's office, she noticed his stern expression and the formal demeanor that had characterized their earlier interaction. "Judge Brooks, thank you for coming so promptly." Judge Ramirez greeted her, his tone formal, yet tinged with an unspoken tension. "What's the matter, Ramirez?" Eleanor asked, sensing the gravity of the situation. Judge Ramirez took a deep breath, adjusting his glasses nervously. "There have been some concerns raised regarding your recent involvement with the community task force. Specifically, there are allegations that your dual roles as a judge and a community leader may present conflicts of interest." Eleanor felt a knot form in her stomach. "I fail to see how my participation in the task force constitutes a conflict of interest. The initiative is focused on community improvement and does not interfere with my judicial duties." Judge Ramirez nodded slowly. "I understand your perspective, but some members of the legal community believe that your prominent role in such a public initiative could be perceived as partiality, especially when dealing with cases that might involve community-related issues." Eleanor maintained her calm, though internally, she felt a surge of frustration. "I assure you, Judge Ramirez, my involvement in the task force will not influence my judicial responsibilities. My commitment to impartiality and fairness remains unwavering." Judge Ramirez leaned forward, his expression softening slightly. "I have faith in your integrity, Eleanor. However, to avoid any potential misunderstandings, it might be prudent to limit your public engagements until we can address these concerns comprehensively." Eleanor felt a pang of resistance. Limiting her involvement would hinder the progress she had hoped to achieve with the task force. "Judge Ramirez, this task force is essential for addressing systemic issues that affect our community's well-being. I believe that my participation can enhance our efforts to create meaningful change." He sighed, a gesture that seemed to carry the weight of the very tensions Eleanor was striving to alleviate. "I understand the importance of your work, Eleanor. Perhaps we can find a middle ground that allows you to continue your advocacy without raising concerns about conflicts of interest." As the meeting concluded, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that her efforts to foster community cohesion were being undermined by the very institutions meant to support her. She left the courthouse with a heavy heart, the barriers erected in the name of propriety serving as a stark reminder of the systemic challenges she faced. Back at home, Eleanor pondered the implications of Judge Ramirez's request. The task force represented a beacon of hope for the community, a tangible step towards addressing deep-seated issues. Yet, the institutional resistance she encountered highlighted the pervasive biases and prejudices that still lingered, even among those who were supposed to uphold justice and equality. Determined not to let these obstacles deter her, Eleanor reached out to Linda Hayes, seeking counsel and support. They met at a local cafe, a neutral ground where they could speak freely about the challenges Eleanor faced. "Linda, it's frustrating," Eleanor confessed, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. "I'm being asked to step back from a project that could really help our community. It feels like my efforts are being stifled because of who I am." Linda listened intently, her eyes filled with empathy. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry you're going through this. It's disheartening to see that even with your accomplishments and dedication, biases still hold sway, but don't lose hope. Your voice is important, and there are people who support you." Eleanor sighed, a mixture of exhaustion and determination etched on her face. "I just wish things were different, that my contributions were recognized without these additional hurdles." Linda reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on Eleanor's. "Change takes time, but every step you take is a step towards making things better. Don't let this discourage you. We need leaders like you who are willing to stand up and fight for what's right." Eleanor nodded, drawing strength from Linda's unwavering support. "You're right. I can't let these obstacles define me or my mission. I need to find a way to continue my work without compromising my integrity or the impact I want to make." As they continued their conversation, Eleanor felt a renewed sense of purpose. The challenges she faced were formidable, but with allies like Linda and the support of her community, she believed that progress was still possible. She resolved to navigate the complexities of her roles, finding innovative ways to balance her judicial responsibilities with her commitment to community advocacy. The days that followed were a testament to Eleanor's resilience. She continued her work at the courthouse with unwavering dedication, handling each case with the fairness and integrity that had earned her respect. Simultaneously, she remained involved with the task force, finding creative solutions to reconcile her dual roles. She engaged in open dialogues with Judge Ramirez and other colleagues, striving to bridge the gap between her professional duties and her community efforts. However, not everyone was supportive. Some of her peers in the legal community viewed her community involvement with skepticism, questioning her priorities and the appropriateness of her dual roles. Subtle microaggressions began to surface, comments that undermined her authority or questioned her motives. "It must be nice to have the time and resources to volunteer like that," one colleague remarked during a meeting, a hint of condescension in his tone. Eleanor maintained her composure, addressing the comment with grace. Community engagement is an integral part of fostering a just and equitable society. It's important for all of us, regardless of our positions, to contribute in meaningful ways. Despite her efforts to stay professional, the underlying bias in such remarks stung. Eleanor felt the weight of each interaction, the subtle dismissals and veiled criticisms serving as constant reminders of the systemic prejudices that permeated even the most respected institutions. One afternoon, as she reviewed case files in her chambers, Eleanor received a call from Henry Caldwell. "Eleanor, I have some concerns about our progress with the task force. It seems there's been some pushback from influential community members who are questioning our intentions." Eleanor felt a familiar frustration bubbling beneath her calm exterior. "Pushback is to be expected, Henry. It's a sign that we're addressing real issues. How can we navigate this resistance?" Henry paused, his voice steady but weary. "We need to be strategic. Perhaps we should involve more stakeholders, engage in public forums to address misconceptions, and highlight the tangible benefits of our initiatives. Transparency will be key in overcoming skepticism." Eleanor agreed, appreciating Henry's pragmatic approach. "That's a good plan. We need to ensure that our efforts are visible and that the community understands our objectives. Let's schedule a series of town hall meetings and outreach programs to maintain momentum." As she ended the call, Eleanor took a deep breath, centering herself. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, but she was determined to persevere. Her commitment to justice and equality was unwavering, even in the face of systemic biases and personal setbacks. That evening, Eleanor attended a community dinner hosted by one of the local businesses. The restaurant was a popular spot, known for its welcoming atmosphere and diverse clientele. As she entered, she was greeted by familiar faces and warm smiles, a comforting reminder of the support she had garnered within the community. She made her way to a table near the back, where a few members of the task force were already gathered. Discussing the upcoming town hall meetings, Eleanor joined them, her presence bringing a sense of purpose to the group. "Eleanor, glad you could make it," Henry greeted her, offering a seat. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Eleanor replied, settling into her chair. "What's the latest on the outreach initiatives?" Maria Lopez, a young social worker involved in the task force, chimed in. "We've reached out to several local organizations and are coordinating with schools to host workshops on community engagement. We're also planning to feature success stories from other towns that have implemented similar programs." Eleanor nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, everyone. It's crucial that we showcase the positive impact we can make. People need to see that these initiatives are about improving lives, not imposing change." As the evening progressed, the conversations flowed smoothly. The camaraderie among the task force members evident. Eleanor felt a sense of hope, knowing that their collective efforts could bring about meaningful transformation. However, beneath the surface, the undercurrents of tension from her professional life still lingered, a reminder of the broader challenges she faced. Returning home that night, Eleanor reflected on the delicate balance she maintained between her roles as a judge and a community advocate. The systemic prejudices she encountered were not always overt, often hidden behind layers of professionalism and societal norms. Yet, Their impact was undeniable, influencing how she was perceived and treated by those around her. As she prepared for bed, Eleanor took a moment to journal her thoughts, a practice she had adopted to navigate the complexities of her dual roles. Writing helped her process the frustrations and reaffirm her commitment to her mission. Today was another step forward with the task force, but the challenges at the courthouse remain. The subtle biases and assumptions that cloud judgment are disheartening, yet I remain steadfast in my pursuit of justice and equality. This journey is about more than just me. It's about creating a community where everyone is respected and valued. I won't let the obstacles deter me. Together, we can make a difference. With her reflections documented, Eleanor felt a renewed sense of determination. The battles she faced were not just personal, but emblematic of the larger societal struggles that demanded attention and action. She was ready to confront these challenges head-on, armed with resilience and the support of those who believed in her vision. Days turned into weeks as the task force gained momentum. The town hall meetings were well attended, drawing diverse groups of residents eager to voice their concerns and contribute to the solutions. Eleanor spearheaded these gatherings with grace and authority, fostering an environment of open dialogue and mutual respect. However, not everyone embraced the task force's efforts with the same enthusiasm. Resistance came not only from influential community members like Mr. Thompson, but also from within the institution she worked for. A formal complaint was filed against Eleanor, alleging that her community involvement was compromising her impartiality as a judge. The complaint, lodged by an anonymous source, sparked whispers and speculation among her colleagues. Eleanor received the notification during a particularly hectic day at the courthouse. Her heart sank as she read the formal language of the complaint, the words feeling like a personal affront. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the importance of her work and the support she had from her community. Seeking counsel, Eleanor reached out to Linda Hayes, who had always been a pillar of strength. They met once again at the cafe, the weight of the situation evident in Eleanor's demeanor. "Linda, I've been accused of a conflict of interest because of my involvement with the task force," Eleanor explained, her voice steady despite the turmoil she felt inside. Linda listened intently, her eyes filled with concern. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor. This is unjust. Your commitment to the community is a testament to your character, not a reflection of bias." Eleanor sighed, her frustration palpable. "It feels like every step forward is met with a setback. I've always maintained the highest standards in my judicial duties, but now my integrity is being questioned because of my advocacy." Linda reached across the table, squeezing Eleanor's hand reassuringly. "Don't let this get to you. You know your worth and the impact you're making. We need to find a way to address this complaint head-on and clear your name." Eleanor nodded, drawing strength from Linda's unwavering support. "I agree. I need to stand firm and demonstrate that my involvement with the task force does not influence my judicial decisions. It's about fostering a better community, not about personal gain or favoritism." Over the next few days, Eleanor dedicated herself to preparing a thorough response to the complaint. She gathered documentation of her cases, testimonies from colleagues who could vouch for her impartiality, and evidence of the task force's positive impact on the community. Her nights were spent poring over legal precedents and crafting a defense that highlighted her integrity and commitment to justice. Meanwhile, the community task force continued to thrive, the town hall meetings serving as a platform for meaningful conversations and actionable solutions. Eleanor's leadership was instrumental in bridging divides, fostering collaboration between different community groups, and addressing issues that had long been ignored. However, the formal complaint cast a shadow over her achievements, adding a layer of tension to her daily interactions at the courthouse. Some colleagues treated her with a newfound reserve, their respect for her veiled by skepticism and doubt. Subtle microaggressions became more frequent, side comments questioning her decisions, hesitant invitations to meetings, and a general sense of exclusion that Eleanor couldn't ignore. One afternoon, as she reviewed her case files, a colleague approached her desk, his expression guarded. "Judge Brooks, do you have a moment?" Eleanor looked up, offering a polite smile. "Of course, Mr. Davis. How can I help you?" Mr. Davis hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I wanted to discuss the Smithson case. I think we need to revisit some of the evidence and ensure everything is in order." Eleanor sensed the underlying tension in his tone. "Absolutely. Let's go over it together. Your input is always valuable." As they delved into the details of the case, Eleanor couldn't help but feel the sting of Mr. Davis's indirect criticism. It was clear that the formal complaint had sown seeds of doubt, even among those who had previously respected her professional prowess. The subtle shifts in behavior were disheartening, yet Eleanor remained resolute, focusing on the task at hand. Later that evening, Eleanor met with Henry to discuss the next steps for the task force. They sat in her living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting warm shadows across the room. "Eleanor, I've been thinking about the complaint," Henry began, his voice steady. "We need to find a way to demonstrate that your role in the task force is entirely separate from your judicial responsibilities. Transparency is key." Eleanor nodded, appreciating his strategic mindset. "I agree. Perhaps we can highlight specific instances where my involvement in the task force has had no bearing on my judicial decisions. Testimonials from those who have worked with me can also help reinforce my impartiality." Henry considered her suggestion thoughtfully. "We could also consider a public statement, outlining the distinction between your professional duties and your community advocacy. It would show that you're open and transparent about your roles." Eleanor smiled, grateful for Henry's unwavering support. "That's an excellent idea. I want the community and my colleagues to see that my commitment to justice remains unshaken by my efforts to improve our town." As they brainstormed strategies, Eleanor felt a sense of empowerment. Despite the systemic biases and the challenges she faced, she was not alone. With allies like Henry and Linda, she could navigate the murky waters of institutional resistance and continue her mission to foster a more just and equitable community. However, the mounting pressure was taking its toll. Eleanor found herself grappling with moments of doubt and frustration, the constant battle against prejudice wearing her down. She sought solace in her nightly journaling, a practice that allowed her to process her emotions and reaffirm her commitment to her principles. "Today was another day of proving my worth and dedication. The complaint feels like a personal attack, but I must rise above it. My work with the task force is about creating a better future for everyone, not about personal accolades. I won't let these challenges deter me from my mission. Together, we can overcome the barriers and build a community rooted in respect and equality." One evening, as she returned home from the courthouse, Eleanor decided to take a different route through the neighborhood park. The familiar path provided a moment of reflection, allowing her to disconnect from the day's stresses and reconnect with her inner strength. As she walked, she noticed a group of young adults gathered near the playground, engaged in a heated discussion. Curious, Eleanor approached, her presence both authoritative and approachable. Among the group was Jasmine, a young activist known for her passionate advocacy for social justice issues. "Eleanor," Jasmine exclaimed, waving her over. "I'm so glad you're here. We need your advice on something." Eleanor smiled warmly, taking a seat beside Jasmine. "Of course, Jasmine. What's on your mind?" Jasmine took a deep breath, her eyes reflecting a mix of determination and concern. "We're organizing a march to raise awareness about the systemic issues in our community, especially those affecting marginalized groups. We want to ensure that it's impactful and doesn't face the kind of resistance you've been dealing with." Eleanor listened attentively, recognizing the parallels between Jasmine's efforts and her own. A march is a powerful way to bring attention to important issues. What challenges are you anticipating? Jasmine hesitated for a moment before continuing. "We're worried about pushback from certain community members and institutions. There's a fear that our message might be misinterpreted or dismissed, just like how your task force has faced criticism." Eleanor felt a pang of empathy. It's disheartening to see progress met with resistance, but it's crucial to stand firm in your convictions. Have you considered involving local leaders and allies to support the march? Their presence could help legitimize the event and counteract some of the negativity. Jasmine nodded, a spark of hope in her eyes. "That's a great idea. We were thinking of reaching out to respected figures in the community who share our vision for change." Eleanor placed a reassuring hand on Jasmine's shoulder. "I'd be happy to help facilitate those connections. Together, we can create a unified front that demands respect and attention for the issues that matter." As they strategized, Eleanor realized that her role extended beyond the courtroom and the task force. She was also a mentor and a leader for the younger generation, guiding them in their pursuit of justice and equality. This realization bolstered her resolve, reminding her of the far-reaching impact her actions could have. However, the mounting resistance was not limited to her professional sphere. One afternoon, as Eleanor drove to another courthouse hearing, she encountered an unexpected obstacle. A group of protesters had gathered outside the courthouse, their signs and chants demanding accountability for what they perceived as judicial bias and systemic injustice. Eleanor felt a mix of emotions as she approached the scene. The protesters, diverse in age and background, held signs that ranged from "justice for all" to more specific demands related to recent community issues. Among them was a man who bore a striking resemblance to Henry Caldwell, his presence a stark reminder of the thin line between advocacy and confrontation. As she parked her car, Eleanor took a moment to compose herself, recognizing that her every action was under scrutiny. She stepped out, meeting the gaze of the crowd with unwavering composure. A few voices rose in her direction, some supportive, others accusatory. "Judge Brooks, you're part of the problem," one protester shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. Eleanor raised her hands, signaling for calm. "I understand your concerns, and I'm here to listen and work together towards a better future for our community." The tension in the air was palpable, the undercurrents of prejudice and bias threatening to undermine the progress Eleanor had fought so hard to achieve. She could feel the weight of their judgments, the assumptions and stereotypes that lingered despite her efforts to dispel them. As she made her way inside the courthouse, Eleanor was acutely aware of the delicate balance she had to maintain. Her humility and modest lifestyle contrasted sharply with her societal position, a juxtaposition that both endeared her to the community and made her a target for those resistant to change. Inside, the courthouse was abuzz with activity. The clamor of lawyers, clerks, and litigants filling the expansive halls. Eleanor moved through the corridors with purpose, her mind focused on the cases at hand. Yet, the earlier encounter with the protesters lingered, a constant reminder of the broader societal challenges that intertwined with her professional duties. In her chambers, Eleanor received a call from Mr. Thompson, the local businessman who had been critical of the task force. "Judge Brooks, we need to talk," he stated, his tone serious. Eleanor sighed, knowing that this conversation could either bridge a gap or further widen the divide. "Of course, Mr. Thompson. What's on your mind?" "I've been reviewing the task force's proposals, and while I support the intent, I have some concerns about the implementation. Specifically, how we ensure that the initiatives are sustainable and not just temporary fixes," he explained, his voice steady but carrying an undertone of skepticism. Eleanor leaned back in her chair, considering his words. "Sustainability is a crucial aspect, Mr. Thompson. We're committed to creating long-term solutions by involving various stakeholders, securing funding, and implementing measurable goals. Your expertise in business could provide valuable insights into creating viable and enduring programs." Mr. Thompson paused, his demeanor softening slightly. "I appreciate your openness, Eleanor. Perhaps we can collaborate on developing strategies that ensure the task force's success and longevity." Eleanor smiled, sensing the potential for constructive collaboration. "I would welcome that, Mr. Thompson. Together, we can create a framework that not only addresses immediate concerns, but also lays the groundwork for sustained progress." As the call concluded, Eleanor felt a glimmer of optimism. Building alliances with influential community members like Mr. Thompson was essential in overcoming the resistance she faced. However, she remained vigilant, aware that the path to meaningful change was fraught with challenges and opposition. Later that week, Eleanor attended another court hearing, her mind partially preoccupied with the ongoing issues outside the courthouse. As she presided over the case, her focus remained sharp, her demeanor composed and fair. However, her interactions with certain colleagues were tinged with underlying tension, subtle microaggressions that chipped away at her resolve. After the hearing, as she exited the courtroom, Eleanor was approached by a young clerk, her eyes downcast. "Judge Brooks, I just wanted to say thank you for your fairness in today's case. It means a lot to us," the clerk whispered, her voice barely audible. Eleanor offered a reassuring smile. "Thank you, Sarah. It's important to treat everyone with respect and impartiality." As Sarah walked away, Eleanor felt a surge of appreciation. Despite the challenges and biases she faced, there were moments of genuine support and recognition that reaffirmed her commitment to her role. It was these small acts of kindness and understanding that kept her grounded, reminding her of the positive impact she could have on individual lives. However, the mounting opposition continued to cast a shadow over her achievements. The formal complaint had sparked a series of institutional hurdles, each one a testament to the pervasive biases that lingered within the very systems meant to uphold justice and equality. Eleanor found herself navigating a complex maze of professional scrutiny and personal resilience, her every move watched and judged by those around her. One afternoon, as she reviewed legal documents in her chambers, Eleanor received an unexpected visit from an old mentor, Judge Anderson, who had retired a few years prior. His presence was a comforting reminder of her roots and the foundational principles that guided her. "Eleanor, it's been too long." Judge Anderson greeted her warmly, taking a seat across from her desk. Eleanor smiled, grateful for the familiar presence. "It has, Judge Anderson. What brings you here today?" He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I heard about the formal complaint filed against you. I wanted to offer my support and see how I can assist you in navigating this situation." Eleanor felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Judge Anderson. It's been a challenging time, but I'm determined to address the concerns and continue my work with the community." Judge Anderson nodded, his eyes reflecting a deep understanding. "I've seen firsthand the dedication and integrity you bring to your role. Don't let this setback discourage you. If there's anything I can do to help, whether it's providing a character reference or offering advice, please don't hesitate to ask." Eleanor felt a surge of appreciation. "Your support means a great deal, Judge Anderson. I may take you up on that offer soon." As they discussed strategies for addressing the complaint, Eleanor felt a renewed sense of purpose. The support of her mentor bolstered her confidence, reinforcing the importance of resilience in the face of adversity. She knew that overcoming these challenges required not only personal strength, but also the support of allies who believed in her mission. However, as she left Judge Anderson's office, Eleanor couldn't ignore the mounting tensions that seemed to permeate every aspect of her professional life. The subtle dismissals and overt criticisms were a constant reminder of the systemic biases that threatened to undermine her efforts. Yet, despite the growing frustration and the internal struggle between anger and composure, Eleanor remained steadfast in her commitment to justice and equality. One evening, as she returned home after a long day at the courthouse, Eleanor found her porch light dimmed, casting eerie shadows across her front yard. A sense of unease settled over her as she approached her door, noticing the faint sound of footsteps echoing in the darkness. As she opened the door, a figure stepped into the light, their identity obscured by the shadows. "Judge Brooks," the voice was muffled, yet its tone carried a hint of menace. Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine, her instincts alerting her to the potential threat. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure stepped forward, revealing a man in his late 30s, his face partially concealed by a hood. "I have a message for you," he said, his voice low and unwavering. Eleanor maintained her composure, though her heart raced. "I don't have time for this. Please leave me alone." The man took a step closer, his gaze intense. "This isn't about leaving you alone, Eleanor. It's about making sure you understand the consequences of your actions." Before Eleanor could respond, the man turned and disappeared into the night, leaving her standing in the dimly lit foyer, her mind racing with questions and concerns. The encounter was a stark reminder that her efforts to foster change were not without opposition, and that some individuals were willing to go to great lengths to undermine her. Determined not to let fear dictate her actions, Eleanor took a deep breath, anchoring herself in the principles that had guided her thus far. She knew that she was walking a path that few dared to tread, a path fraught with challenges, but also filled with the potential for meaningful impact. As she locked the door behind her, Eleanor's thoughts turned to the support she had received from Linda, Henry, and Judge Anderson. Their unwavering belief in her mission provided a beacon of hope, a reminder that she was not alone in her fight for justice and equality. Yet, the lingering threat of the mysterious encounter weighed heavily on her, a symbol of the unseen forces that sought to impede her progress. Eleanor knew that to overcome these obstacles, she would need to draw upon every ounce of her resilience and leverage the support of her allies. The following days were marked by a renewed sense of determination. Eleanor continued her work with the task force, pushing forward with the town hall meetings and outreach initiatives. The community's response was mixed, with some embracing the changes and others clinging to entrenched biases and prejudices. During one particularly tense meeting, Eleanor addressed a group of elderly residents who were skeptical of the task force's intentions. Their resistance was palpable, their words laced with suspicion and distrust. "Judge Brooks, we've heard these promises before. How can we be sure that this task force won't just become another bureaucratic entity that fails to deliver meaningful results?" one resident questioned, her voice tinged with frustration. Eleanor met her gaze steadily, her voice calm and measured. "I understand your skepticism, and it's valid. Our goal is to implement tangible, measurable changes that address the root causes of our community's challenges. We're committed to transparency and accountability, ensuring that our efforts yield real, lasting impact." Another resident chimed in, "But what about the history of these initiatives falling apart? How do we prevent that from happening again?" Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "That's why we're taking a different approach. We're involving a diverse group of stakeholders, securing sustainable funding, and establishing clear metrics for success. We're not here to impose solutions, but to collaborate with the community to identify and address the issues that matter most to you." Despite her efforts to reassure the residents, Eleanor could sense the lingering doubts. The path to acceptance was gradual, and she knew that perseverance was key. Each conversation, each meeting, was a step towards bridging the gaps and fostering understanding, even in the face of resistance. Meanwhile, back at the courthouse, the formal complaint against Eleanor was gaining traction. The higher-ups were now involved, and an internal review was underway to assess the validity of the allegations. The process was slow, methodical, but each passing day added to the mounting pressure Eleanor felt. One morning, as she entered her chambers, Eleanor found a letter awaiting her. The letterhead bore the emblem of the courthouse, and the formal language indicated it was from the Internal Review Committee. "Dear Judge Brooks, we have received your response to the formal complaint filed against you regarding your involvement with the Community Task Force. We appreciate your prompt and detailed explanation of the measures you have taken to ensure there is no conflict of interest. Our committee will conduct a thorough review of the matter and will inform you of any further actions required. Sincerely, Clerk of the Court." Eleanor felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The acknowledgement of her response was a positive sign, yet the uncertainty of the outcome weighed heavily on her. She took a moment to compose herself, reminding herself of the support she had and the importance of staying focused on her mission. Later that afternoon, as she sat in her office reviewing case files, Eleanor received another call from Henry. "Eleanor, how are you holding up? I've heard some rumors about the internal review process. It's causing quite a stir." Eleanor sighed, leaning back in her chair. "It's been tough, Henry. The scrutiny is relentless, but I'm trying to stay focused on the task force and our goals. How's everything going on your end?" Henry hesitated before responding. "There are whispers about expanding the task force's scope, possibly including more controversial topics. It's stirring up some unrest among certain community members who feel threatened by the changes." Eleanor's mind raced, contemplating the implications. "We need to tread carefully. Expanding the scope is important, but we must ensure that we're inclusive and considerate of all perspectives. Let's discuss strategies to manage the backlash while still pushing forward with our initiatives." As they strategized, Eleanor couldn't help but reflect on the broader implications of her position. The systemic prejudices and biases she encountered were not just external, but had seeped into the very institutions she was part of. Overcoming these challenges required not only personal resilience, but also a collective effort to dismantle the barriers that hindered progress. The days turned into weeks, and the internal review process progressed slowly. Eleanor continued to excel in her judicial duties, handling each case with the same dedication and fairness that had defined her career. Yet, the undercurrents of bias and resistance remained a constant presence, a reminder of the systemic challenges that demanded her attention and advocacy. One evening, as she prepared for another town hall meeting, Eleanor received a visit from Judge Anderson. His presence was a welcome sight, his demeanor calm and supportive. "Eleanor, I wanted to check in and see how you're doing," he said, taking a seat across from her. Eleanor appreciated the gesture. "I'm managing, Judge Anderson. The formal complaint is still under review, and the task force is making progress, albeit with some resistance." Judge Anderson nodded thoughtfully. These are the kind of challenges that test our resolve and commitment. Remember, you're not alone in this. Lean on your support network and stay true to your principles. Eleanor felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, Judge Anderson. Your support means a lot. As they discussed the progress of the task force and strategies for addressing the ongoing challenges, Eleanor felt a renewed sense of purpose. The support of mentors like Judge Anderson and allies like Henry and Linda provided the strength she needed to navigate the complexities of her roles. However, the mounting resistance was not confined to her professional life alone. During one of her evening walks through the park, Eleanor encountered a group of teenagers who had been observing her recent activities. Among them was Marcus, the bright young man she had mentored earlier. "Judge Brooks," Marcus greeted her with a hesitant smile, "we wanted to talk to you about the task force." Eleanor smiled warmly, appreciating their engagement. "Of course, Marcus. What's on your mind?" One of the teenagers, a girl named Aisha, spoke up, her voice steady despite the underlying tension. "We've been seeing the resistance you're facing, and we want to help. How can we support the task force and make sure our voices are heard?" Eleanor felt a surge of pride. "Your support is invaluable, Aisha. You can help by spreading the word about our initiatives, participating in the town hall meetings, and encouraging your peers to get involved. Every voice counts in creating the change we seek." As they discussed ways to enhance the task force's reach and impact, Eleanor couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. The younger generation's enthusiasm and willingness to engage were a testament to the potential for lasting change, a beacon of light amidst the shadows of resistance. However, the challenges Eleanor faced were far from over. The internal review was nearing its conclusion, and the anticipation of its outcome added a layer of tension to her daily routine. She remained vigilant, knowing that the path to justice and equality was paved with both victories and setbacks. One morning, as Eleanor prepared for another day at the courthouse, she received a call from her assistant, Michael. "Judge Brooks, there's a request for a meeting from the Internal Review Committee. They'd like to discuss your involvement with the Community Task Force in more detail." Eleanor felt a knot form in her stomach. "Thank you, Michael, please schedule it for later today." As the day progressed, Eleanor balanced her judicial responsibilities with the ongoing efforts of the task force, each role demanding her full attention. Yet, the looming meeting with the Internal Review Committee cast a shadow over her day, a reminder of the systemic biases she was up against. Later that afternoon, she entered the conference room where the meeting was to take place. The room was austere, with a long table surrounded by chairs, and the walls adorned with plaques symbolizing the courthouse's commitment to justice and integrity. Sitting at the head of the table were members of the Internal Review Committee, their expressions professional yet inscrutable. "Judge Brooks, thank you for joining us today," the chairperson began, her tone formal. "We've reviewed your response to the formal complaint and would like to discuss your involvement with the Community Task Force further." Eleanor maintained her composure, nodding respectfully. "I'm here to address any concerns you may have and to provide any additional information necessary." The chairperson leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Your involvement with the task force is commendable, and we recognize the positive impact it has had on the community. However, we need to ensure that your role does not compromise your impartiality as a judge. Can you elaborate on how you maintain this balance?" Eleanor took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Certainly, my involvement with the task force is entirely separate from my judicial duties. The task force focuses on community improvement initiatives, while my role as a judge remains dedicated to upholding the law with fairness and impartiality. I have established clear boundaries to ensure there is no overlap or conflict of interest between the two roles." One of the committee members interjected, "Have you ever faced a situation where your community advocacy might have influenced your judicial decisions?" Eleanor shook her head firmly. "No. I have always maintained strict separation between my advocacy work and my judicial responsibilities. My commitment to justice remains unwavering, and I ensure that my personal endeavors do not interfere with my professional duties." The chairperson studied her intently, the silence stretching between them. Finally, she nodded thoughtfully. "Your assurances are noted, Judge Brooks. We will continue to monitor the situation and ensure that there is no conflict of interest. Your contributions to the community are valued, and we support your efforts to foster positive change." As the meeting concluded, Eleanor felt a mixture of relief and lingering apprehension. The Internal Review Committee's response was measured and professional, but the underlying tensions remained a testament to the systemic biases that still plagued the institution. She left the room with a renewed sense of determination, aware that her journey was far from over. Back at home, Eleanor found solace in the quiet of her living room. She reached for her journal, penning down her thoughts as a way to process the day's events. Today's meeting with the Internal Review Committee was a crucial step in addressing the concerns raised. Their acknowledgement of my efforts with the task force is encouraging, yet the underlying biases that influenced the complaint are a stark reminder of the challenges that remain. I must continue to uphold my integrity and remain steadfast in my mission, knowing that true change requires persistence and unwavering commitment. As she wrote, Eleanor felt a sense of clarity wash over her. The obstacles she faced were emblematic of the broader societal issues that demanded attention and action. Her role as a judge and a community advocate intertwined, each reinforcing the other in the pursuit of justice and equality. However, as she closed her journal, Eleanor couldn't help but feel that the most significant challenges were yet to come. The systemic prejudices and biases were deeply entrenched, and overcoming them required not only personal resilience, but also a collective effort to dismantle the barriers that hindered progress. The following week, as Eleanor prepared for another day at the courthouse, she received an unexpected visit from Mayor Thompson. His presence was a blend of respect and concern, a testament to the delicate balance Eleanor had navigated within the community. "Judge Brooks, may I have a word?" Mayor Thompson asked, his tone earnest. Eleanor nodded, gesturing for him to take a seat. "Of course, Mayor Thompson. How can I assist you?" The mayor settled into the chair, his expression thoughtful. "I wanted to commend you on your leadership with the task force. Despite the challenges you're facing, your dedication to our community is evident. However, I'm also aware of the internal scrutiny you're under, and I wanted to offer my support in any way possible." Eleanor appreciated his candor. "Thank you, Mayor Thompson. Your support means a great deal, especially during these challenging times." He nodded, leaning forward slightly. "I understand the importance of your work, and I want to ensure that you have the resources and backing needed to continue your efforts. If there are any additional support or adjustments we can make to help you navigate the internal review process, please don't hesitate to let me know." Eleanor felt a surge of gratitude. "I appreciate that, Mayor Thompson. Your support is invaluable as we work towards creating a more just and equitable community." As the mayor left her office, Eleanor felt a renewed sense of hope. The backing of influential community leaders like him provided a crucial layer of support, reinforcing the legitimacy of her efforts and shielding her from some of the institutional biases she faced. However, as she returned to her work, Eleanor couldn't ignore the subtle shifts in her interactions at the courthouse. The microaggressions and veiled criticisms were a constant reminder of the systemic prejudices that still lingered within the institution. She remained determined to rise above them, her commitment to justice and equality unshaken by the challenges she faced. One afternoon, as she presided over a particularly complex case, Eleanor found herself at the center of a heated debate. The defendant, a young man named Kevin Harris, was accused of theft, and the prosecution had presented compelling evidence. However, Eleanor's keen eyes noticed inconsistencies in the testimony that suggested potential bias against Kevin due to his background. As the proceedings continued, Eleanor felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She knew that her role as a judge required impartiality, but she also recognized the subtle biases that could influence even the most well-intentioned decisions. She took a deep breath, focusing on the facts and the principles of justice that had guided her throughout her career. "Counselors, I believe we need to revisit the evidence presented in this case," Eleanor stated, her voice firm yet measured. "There are discrepancies that require further examination to ensure a fair and just outcome."